It was a morning like any other at St. Helena Hospital. The hallways were filled with professionals in white coats, patients, and families rushing about, but something special lingered in the air. John Lutz, a 28-year-old doctor, walked through the emergency wing with his impeccably clean coat and meticulously combed brown hair. He reviewed his shift notes as his green eyes gleamed under the light streaming through the wide windows. John was not only known for his technical expertise, but also for the human way he treated each patient. The only child of a renowned surgeon and a university professor, he had grown up surrounded by privilege but found true satisfaction working in a public hospital, serving those who needed it the most. As he walked through the corridors, an emergency call echoed. A young woman had been hit by a car on her way to work. John rushed to assist. Upon arrival, he found Christine Mendez, a 23-year-old woman, unconscious on the stretcher. Her brown hair was spread across the white sheet, and her navy blue uniform from the store where she worked was neatly pressed, even amidst the chaos of the accident. Little did John know, he was about to be deeply impacted by the story of this young woman. Christine was an extraordinary person. Every day, she woke up at 6 a.m. to help her parents with the small family grocery store. Among fresh bread and bottles of coffee, she dreamed of the day she could study psychology. In her simple room, decorated with magazine cutouts, photos of places she wished to visit, and small thank you notes from customers, Christine maintained an infectious optimism despite the financial difficulties she faced. On that fateful morning, Christine was hurrying to catch the bus that would take her to the mall where she worked as a sales associate. But as she crossed the street, she was struck by a car. Now she was under John's care, who had no idea how profoundly his life would change because of her. In the first few weeks, Christine remained in a coma. John limited himself to technical visits, adjusting medications and checking test results, but the emptiness of that room left him unsettled. One day, upon entering, he found Christine's father sitting beside the bed, holding a worn psychology book. The man clutched it tightly, as if that object could somehow bring his daughter back. Through silent tears, he murmured that it was her favorite book. The cover was worn, with dog-eared corners from frequent use, and the title, Developmental Psychology, caught John's attention. Curious, he picked up the book at the end of his shift, and as he read, something happened. On the margins of the pages, there were small notes written in a delicate yet firm handwriting. "Compassion is the key to understanding others," one highlighted passage said. Another read, "Never underestimate the impact of a kind word." Further ahead he found, "One day, I will make a difference in someone's life." Each phrase seemed to whisper directly to him, touching something deep within that he hadn't even realized existed. John felt strangely connected to the young woman. A woman he barely knew, yet who had already left a mark on his soul. He looked at Christine, so fragile in that bed, and wondered how she could see the world in such a sensitive and genuine way. He began to imagine her voice, the gentle tone she might have used while writing those phrases. Why did this affect him so deeply? Perhaps, he thought, because those words held answers he had been seeking for years. From that day on, he allowed himself to spend longer moments in Christine's room. Between visits, he brought the book with him and read aloud, as if she could hear him. As he read, he felt an unusual calm, as though the words were connecting them in a silent, intangible dimension. Every underlined sentence felt like an invitation to reflect on life, on what truly mattered. The loneliness he often carried seemed to fade when he was by her side, even if she couldn't respond. It didn't take long for Christine's room to become a silent refuge for John. He adjusted the curtains so sunlight could filter softly into the room, brought fresh flowers to brighten the space, and organized the books beside her bed as though preparing the room for her awakening. Even without hearing her voice, he began to know her. Each note told a story, every underlined passage revealed a passion. Gradually, without realizing it, the woman who slept began to change the way he saw the world, and more importantly himself. From that moment, John dedicated even more time to Christine's room. He brought fresh flowers, adjusted the curtains to make the room feel warmer, and read aloud passages from the book. Even without knowing if Christine could hear him, he felt that it created a special connection between them. His interest went beyond professionalism. He was deeply moved by the woman she was, even without having exchanged a single word with her. 6 months passed, and the medical team began to notice signs of more intense brain activity. During one of his visits, John noticed Christine's eyelids trembling faintly. He called the team, and monitoring intensified. Days later, Christine opened her eyes for the first time. Her movements were still limited, and her voice was weak, but something happened in that instant. She looked at John, and even without fully understanding, a faint smile appeared on her lips. As if somehow, she recognized him. A distant echo of familiar voices, perhaps, or the calm and steady sound of his voice reading to her during those endless days of silence. John froze for a moment. His heart raced. He had read about people in comas who could hear the world around them, as though the mind found ways to cling to life even when the body wouldn't respond. And now, seeing that smile, he knew. She had heard him. All those times he read passages aloud, all the words about compassion, about dreams, about never giving up. Christine had listened. She might not yet know who he was, but the sound of his voice had been an invisible thread connecting her to the world. In Christine's eyes, there was a faint glow, like the dawn of a day after a long night. For John, that moment confirmed everything he had begun to feel. Unable to hold back a smile, he leaned slightly and whispered as if sharing a secret, "Welcome back, Christine. I knew you were listening to us." His heart filled with hope, and in that smile, he saw the promise of a future beginning to take shape between them. From then on, John became a constant presence in Christine's life. He encouraged her through physical therapy sessions, read to her, and helped her rebuild her confidence. Christine, in turn, began to notice small details about him, the care with which he adjusted her pillows, the soft tone of his voice, and the faint, pleasant scent of his cologne. Her feelings for him began to grow, though she lacked the courage to admit it. When the day came for Christine to be discharged, John suggested she continue attending support groups at the hospital. It was a subtle way to maintain contact, but he knew he didn't want to lose that bond. Christine, still recovering, felt a mix of nervousness and joy at the suggestion. John's gaze was always steady and kind, but there was something more, a silent promise that he would still be there, even though the hospital room was now empty. In their first meetings at the hospital cafeteria, their conversations were simple and light, revolving around psychology theories and daily stories. But as the days passed, they began to share more. John spoke about his uncertainties, about how her silent voice during the coma had helped him rediscover a deeper purpose in life. Christine, for her part, was surprised to hear this. She began to understand what she felt, that warmth that grew with every glance, every careful gesture of his, like when he gently pushed a cup of coffee toward her with a subtle smile. Over time, Christine realized that, even in the coma, she had clung to his voice. John would recount how he read passages from the books she loved so much, and it brought flashes of memories to her mind. Fragments of dreams where a familiar voice guided her through the darkness. Her heart raced as she heard this. He had been there, every moment. Slowly, she understood that the fresh flowers, the neatly arranged books, and the gentleness of his voice had been the invisible thread keeping her connected to life. One afternoon, as they sat in a quieter corner of the hospital cafeteria, Christine let slip, "I don't know how to explain it, John, but I heard you. Somehow, I knew you were there. Not as a memory, but as a presence." John remained silent for a moment, surprised yet deeply moved. He felt as though her confession was proof of what he had always believed. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, laden with emotion. "Maybe because you weren't alone, Christine." "I wasn't alone either." Christine smiled, feeling the weight of his words touch something profound in her heart. From that moment, the connection between them deepened. Gradually, the silent space that had brought them together gave way to something alive, light laughter, small gestures full of meaning. She began to eagerly anticipate each meeting, every coffee shared on a cool, sunny afternoon. The world around them seemed to disappear when they were together, and all that existed was the way his eyes looked at her, as if he saw not only the woman she was now but also the woman full of dreams he had come to know through her notes. Their friendship, nurtured over time and mutual understanding, quickly blossomed into something deeper. Christine, now stronger, began to notice every act of care from John, how he adjusted her coat on cold days or smiled while listening to her talk about her plans to return to school. What had started as a quiet, subtle friendship became the foundation of a love that, even without words, had begun long ago, in the silence of a hospital room. One day, John invited Christine for a walk. They went to a cafe housed in a historic building downtown. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold, John finally found the courage to confess what he had been feeling. Taking a deep breath, he said, "Christine, from the day I saw you in that hospital room, something changed in me. Every detail about you, your notes in the books, the stories your parents told me, has inspired me more than I ever imagined. And when I read to you, it was as if the silence didn't exist. It was like you were there, listening to me." Christine looked at him, her eyes shining, her heart racing. Her voice came out soft, trembling with the emotion she felt. "John, I don't know how to thank you. When everything was dark and silent, it was your voice that reached me. And now, hearing this from you, I never thought that, after going through so much fragility, I would find someone like you. Someone so kind, so special." John smiled, surprised and relieved. The weight of uncertainty vanished in that moment. They looked at each other for a long time, as if reading each other's thoughts. The golden light of the sunset reflected on their faces, making the moment even more unforgettable. It was then, as if time had stopped, that John gently leaned closer. Christine responded, closing her eyes as he tenderly touched her face. They shared their first kiss, tender and full of meaning. It was as though all the unspoken words, all the silent moments that had united them, had finally found a voice. In that instant, they both knew something had changed forever. Christine smiled against John's lips, and he held her close, as if wanting to protect her from everything. The world around them seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them, wrapped in a love that had begun long before, in the quiet of a hospital room. From that day on, their lives became inseparably intertwined. Christine returned to her job at the clothing store, and John frequently stopped by to update his wardrobe, finding excuses to see her. They shared lunch breaks in the food court and began planning their future together. John encouraged Christine to resume her psychology studies, while she helped him discover new meanings for his own life. Months later, John proposed to her. The ceremony was held in a small chapel decorated with white orchids, the same flowers he used to bring to Christine's hospital room. Surrounded by friends and family, they exchanged vows that reflected the journey they had walked together. "You taught me to see beauty in the little moments," John said. "And you showed me that love can overcome any silence," Christine replied. Their life together was filled with small gestures of love, notes left around the house, coffee shared at dawn, and long conversations about dreams and plans. Christine graduated in psychology and began working with patients facing challenges similar to those she had overcome. John continued his medical career, now with a renewed perspective on life and love. What began as a silent connection in a hospital room blossomed into a deep and transformative love. John and Christine proved that, even in life's most fragile moments, when everything seems lost, true love can appear in unexpected ways. Care, kindness, and perseverance not only heal wounds, but also build bridges to a future filled with hope. They showed that love, even born in silence, has the power to break barriers and remind us that there is always something beautiful waiting to be discovered. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave a like, share it with someone special, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories that speak to the soul. Love can be found anywhere, and who knows, maybe the next story will be yours.